What would you do without your phone? Imagine how different your life would be if the iPhone never ever came out. Think, there would be no Androids, no Apple Store, no Postmates, and no Uber. No Uber. What would you do? How would you get places without Uber? Now, think of something even crazier than living without Uber. Yeah, I know, without Uber. And that is how much money you would have today if you invested money in Apple when the iPhone first came out in 2007. That would be a crazy number, right? Well, today we're gonna find out. Hey guys, it's Michael here. Welcome back to today's video. I hope you had a wonderful day, and in today's video we're going to be looking at how much money you would have today if instead of buying the first generation iPhone, you invested that money into the Apple stock. And you know, that would have been a big decision back then because Apple today, you know them because iPhone. Almost everyone, it feels like, really has an iPhone. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Investing is the most powerful way to grow your money. Unless you're doing something illegal, of course, which, you can't compare to that because it's illegal. So, you can't be doing that. So, the reason investing is the most powerful way to grow your money is because of my good old friend, compound interest. And yep, I said it, compound interest. With compound interest, your money grows extremely well over time. Let me explain. The stock market over the last century, the last 100 years, has produced an average return of almost 10% every single year. And let me tell you something, that adds up a lot over time because, 10% with $100, you get 110. Then another 10%, you're at, 121. It keeps growing up higher and higher and higher. And remember, 10% is just the average rate of return for the stock market over the last 100 years. So think about it. If you picked a stock like Apple or Amazon really early on, you'd make way more than 10% a year. But before we get into how much money you would have if you invested in Apple when the iPhone first came out, we first gotta go all the way back, bring it back all the way to January of 2007 when the iPhone was first announced. We all know how much an iPhone is if you need to buy it today. It'll set you back close to $1,000. And that's after, I'm not saying they cost $1,000, but once you include Apple Care, a case, maybe some headphones, a screen protector, it'll get up to $1,000 real quick. But when Steve Jobs first announced the iPhone in January of 2007 at the Macworld convention, the iPhone was $499 for a measly 4 gigabytes of storage and $599 for a whopping 8 gigabytes of storage. And we gotta address this storage issue right now, because storage on an iPhone today, you can get 512 gigabytes, 128, 64. You can't even get anything below 64 gigabytes today. So to think, you got 4. Sit with 4 gigabytes. Maybe today you can hold like 1 movie, 2 movies. That was nothing. Anyways, when Apple first came out with the iPhone, it wasn't perfect. And, we all know that no first generation phone, a camera, computer, doesn't matter. The first generation is not going to be perfect. There are going to be issues, which is why not as many people actually bought the very first generation iPhone as you would expect. But every single year, the iPhone gets better and better and better and better. Yep, just keeps getting better. So, it's crazy how much the iPhone has changed from the very first generation. But let's bring it back to 2007. Let's see how much it was then, and if instead of buying the first generation iPhone, if you took that money and you invested into the stock, let's see how much you make. The first generation iPhone, like I said before, we're going to go with the $599 price because that was for 8 gigabytes. Who's buying 4 gigabytes? That's like nothing. So let's assume you were going to buy the 8 gigabytes worth of storage on your iPhone. That would set you back $599 when it was released in June 29th, 2007. On the release date, the very first day you could buy an iPhone, the Apple stock was $17.43. Yeah, just a mere $17.43. You have to remember though, that Apple wasn't the same as it is today. Apple was really made huge by the iPhone, at least in my opinion. You know, they have computers for a while, but the iPhone was a game changer. And when the iPhone first came out, there were issues like we had spoken about. So investing in the stock or buying the iPhone, neither one of those were like a sure bet because people complained about it dropping calls because there wasn't an antenna. People were like, well, where'd the antenna of the phone go? And you know, I don't see the antenna, it's inside the phone, so they were saying calls were dropping. Another thing was, the touchscreen had issues. The screen would crack easier than it does now. There were a lot of issues, but still, when it was released, that first weekend, they sold 300,000 iPhones. But remember, there's about 300 million people in the US, so it's not near as much as they do today. Anyways, back to the stock price. If you invested that $599 on June 29th, 2007, you'd be able to buy 34.36 shares of Apple. Let's assume that you can't buy parts of a share, at least maybe you didn't at that point. You can today with Robinhood, but maybe you didn't. So let's assume you got 34 shares at $17.43. That's right around $592. You have to remember that buying an iPhone on that date was not an obvious decision. It wasn't like, oh, it's Apple. Apple's gonna go up and up forever. They're gonna be $1 trillion company. No, not as many people knew about Apple and weren't impressed by Apple. So when the first phone came out, the first iPhone came out on June 29th and people could buy it, 300,000 people bought it that opening weekend. And you might be like, wow, that is a lot of phones. But no, with the iPhone 11 Pro, they sold 11 million in the initial week of the phone coming out. So huge difference, 300,000 to now 11 million. Because think about it, there are like around 300 million people in the US alone. So it's not all 11 million in the US, but 300,000 to 11 million, that's a big difference. So buying the stock wasn't an obvious decision, and buying the phone wasn't obvious either. Every single year after the iPhone came out, they've added improvements, with the camera, with the screen, with the shape and design of the phone. They keep adding improvements. So the stock price has steadily increased and increased. But holding on to that stock from 2007, if you did invest in it, it's very unlikely. Some people did it. But I want to keep that in mind because you might be like, well, no one would have kept the stock that long. Like, no, you couldn't make that much money. But some people did. And today, the stock is worth right around $298. So remember, you got 34 shares of it with just your $599. The cost of the phone, when iPhone first came out, that cost of the phone got you 34 shares. That would mean that if you invested that $599 into the Apple stock, instead of buying the first generation iPhone, you would have $10,143 today. That's crazy. And I know what you're thinking. I said, the true cost, and you're thinking it's gonna be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But think about it. In 12 and a half years, your $592 investment, because remember, that's how much the 34 shares cost, Your $592 investment being over $10,000 is insane. It's like 17 times your initial investment. And like we spoke about before, the average rate of return for the stock market is 10%. I'm telling you, $592 to $10,143, that's not 10% every year. That's way more than 10%. To get to 17 times your money, that's more than 10% a year. As you can see, the power of compound interest is huge. And then consider investing in a stock like Apple or Amazon that simply exploded in the 2000s. You can make a lot of money, and you might be regretting buying, something like that first generation iPhone or that couch. You're like, well, I should have just invested that $600 into the stock, and today I'd have 10K. But we all have to remember that buying an iPhone in 2007 was not an obvious decision, and buying or investing in Apple stock was not an obvious decision either, because the company just wasn't the same as it is today. Also, another thing to reiterate is that even someone who did buy their stock in 2007, and even if they still have it today, they might have sold it a couple times along the way. They might be like, oh, it's at $50, almost tripled my money. Yes, let's go. I'm gonna sell it. And they'll be like, oh, now it's at $70. Well, so they might have bought it back at 70 and then, sold it again at 100, and then they could have bought and sold it a couple times and still own it today. A lot of people probably didn't own it the whole duration, from $17.43 to $298 like it is today. But if you had decided to keep with your investment and instead of buying that first phone, you kept the money in Apple stock, you would have $10,143 today, which many people did, and that is the true cost of buying that first iPhone, because either way that money went to Apple to help them. So either spent the money in their stock or you bought an iPhone. If I could redo it, I would have bought and invested in their stock, because the first generation iPhone could have waited for a 3G, the third generation iPhone. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Also, a quick reminder is that if you'd like a free stock, download Robinhood using the link below. If you like two free stocks, valued up to $1,400, use the link below for Webull. And if you'd like a whole $5, immediate $5, download Acorns Investing using the link below. I post at least 3 times a week on this. Always, until next time.